lived in good, clean water, good air supply, food, everything the fish could need. And the fish grew bigger and stronger and happier. It was a happy, happy fish. And one day it was just swimming as fast as it could out of sheer joy, and it made an arc, and it jumped out of the water. And it jumped far out of the water. And it went, and then it was happy. And it said, "What was that?" It wasn't water. And he asked people, other fish, "What do we call that?" "What?" "That up there." "I don't know, I've never been up there." "What do you call it?" And they decided on a super technical term. Not water. That's the not water. And I use this story to introduce, there are two bedrock emotions in our world: love and not love. Not love. That's what we have. We either have love or not love. And for today, we're going to call not love something else. Fear. Because isn't not love fear? If I don't feel loved, I feel fear. I'm afraid they won't love me. It's not love, it's fear. So with that, we'll introduce the PowerPoint presentation of the day. That ain't it? Okay, so from happy fish to face your fears. Don't look at these now. I'm not ready. Okay. Again, facing your fears. Okay. Can you guess what the title of today's talk is?
Facing your fears?
Happy fish. Come on. No matter what you said, I was going to change it. So, have you ever been so scared that you literally froze in place? Chickens do it all the time. Or are you the type that when you're scared, you're beat feet out of there, moving away from the perceived threat? So what is it that causes us to either freeze and become paralyzed or beat feet? Are there certain fears, phobias, or panic-inducing situations that you've confronted, adapted to, and learned to overcome? Researchers continue to find evidence that being proactive and facing your fears is the best way to overcome them. But what are the internal processes of dealing with these different types of danger? Why are some people more prone to chronic stress, panic attacks, PTSD? We'll explore all of this in Transcending Fear. This outline, which we've already not used any of, is from Reverend Gail Dillon, Senior Minister at Genesis Global Spiritual Center in Burien, Washington. So, excuse me. So, you know, I've been a fan of neuroscience, and the scientists have been studying the effects of fear on the brain. There were two studies recently that came out that sort of contradicted what they'd assumed all along, and that fear took place in the amygdala of the brain, like literally one step above the reptilian, spinal column. But they're studying that and its role in fear and fearlessness, and the more they know, the less they understand about where fear is based in the body. Other regions, such as the brainstem, the insular cortex, also sense the body's most primal inner signals of danger. And the research says panic or intense fear is induced somewhere outside the amygdala. News to me. The very signs of danger activate the amygdala, but they may not originate there. So we still have a very heavy dose of our DNA that enabled our ancestors to survive when they weren't even close to the top of the food chain. It was eat or be eaten. We were programmed biologically to beat feet. When we perceived any threat to our survival, and it worked about 7.5 billion times, that we're still here. Well, others that were higher on the food chain are not. Fear can make you run and hide. It can motivate you to take action. And it can freeze you dead in your tracks. And then it's literally, you're dead in your tracks. Studies have shown a specific type of neurons in the amygdala determine how mice react to a frightening stimulus. They've done things where they deactivated the amygdala in mice, and they become fearless. Pretty interesting. The suggested science of mind point of view is this. Fear and faith are identical in that energy used in the one is the same energy used in the other. Since there is but one final energy in the universe, and this final energy is the energy of thought. Fear is a positive acceptance that you shall experience something you dislike. Faith is a positive acceptance that you shall experience what you do like. But they're identical in their mental action. The only difference is in the direction of the thought. In Effective Prayer by Dr. Holmes, he says, we are part of the matrix of our planet. It not only makes a difference in how we treat the earth physically, our state of being, our emotions have an effect on living things and computers and Mother Earth. We have an effect on all these things. So talking about science of mind is somewhat different than truly living in our philosophy. Oh, I forgot to mention. If you have a cell phone, take it out and tell everybody where you are. Go on Facebook and post, I'm at Circle's Edge, like Aaron does when he's here for Reiki. I'm serious. Feel free. Tell people. Call them. Go, hey, I'm at Circle's Edge.
I'll call you back.
Right now.
It's okay.
Come on down. We'll be here a while.
It's okay.
He's really wound up today.
Call CarMax?
What?
Call CarMax?
Ah, tell the salesman to come on over. We have great goodies. To live in the science of mind teaching, we need to focus on our fears and determine why, either consciously or unconsciously, we believe they're serving us. The only way to truly live a life of oneness for ourselves, our family, our friends, and the planet is to begin within. Fear is a showstopper. We've all heard the acronyms, forget everything and run, or face everything and rise. I got a new one this morning as part of the download. Forgive easily and repair.
Ooh.
That just came this morning. Feel free to quote me. How about false evidence appearing real? That's something we hear all the time as practitioners. I think I have a slide about that.
Yeah.
False evidence appearing real. And all the other ones. Forget everything and run. That is what we are biologically programmed to do. And all this talk about the amygdala is good. But what happens in a crisis situation, when we are struck with panic, one part of our brain deactivates. Logic is gone. We are filled with adrenaline. We have forgotten everything so we can run far and run fast. And humans can run longer than predators. Did you know that? And horses. In a 50-mile horse race, a runner will almost always win. If he's a distance runner. It's all biological. Anything. So these are nice reminders and they're cute. Yet the real answer isn't in the acronyms. The answer is truly a question. How do I face my fears? We all want quick fixes, and I'm not saying transcending fear takes a long time. It just takes as long as it takes. Most of us will face one fear, we'll have it, we get it, and then a new one pops up. That's how it works. Transcending anything is a process, and it takes practice. Now I want to quote another great philosopher of our time, Will Smith, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Fear is not real. It's a product of thoughts you create. Don't misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice. I like that. Good job, Will. Fears are nothing more than a state of mind. How are we going to face that fear? What steps can we take? The first step is live a life of oneness. What's the biggest thing right now that keeps you from living the most outrageous life you want? Think about that and work backwards in time and find out where that story got created. Was it something to do with fear? Ask yourself, was it real then? Is it real now? Or just a story that perpetuates the same results? Well, I had to do something myself this week because I had an unresolved fear, and I felt if I got up and talked about this, I'd feel like a hypocrite. I haven't ridden my horse for over 2 years. My Mustang, Skitty, he was green broke when I got him. And the plan was Susan and I were going to ride. Well, her horse deteriorated, got old. She got sick, has, surgeries and all kinds of stuff. I haven't ridden for 2 years. And I was thinking, oh my God, if that had been one of my Arabs, 2 years, they'd be wild. In fact, her horse is pretty crazy wild. But I got on my horse and rode him this week with whatever thought of fear I had was a joke. I thought that horse would revert, but apparently he's way smarter than I am because it was a pleasant, easy ride. And I had to do it so I could stand up here and not be a hypocrite, because that was something that's been pressing on my mind for a long time. I think there's another slide. Fear of facing your fears is harder to overcome than the fear itself. That was so true of me in my corporate world. I'd get a glimmer of a project that we could do or something, and I was like, oh God, do I want to take on another project? It'd be good for the company, but I don't know how to do it. Well, that's because I haven't done it yet. You have to face the fear of being fearful so you can overcome the whole process. It's a good time to remind everyone that in this community there are 2 practitioners that you can meet with, and we can help you work through your fears. Here's a quote from David Powers. As with any tree, the tree of fear must be attacked at the roots. Dealing with the leaves, the symptoms, not enough. You must attack the roots. And that's what Kate and I are here to offer to you anytime. Just reach out. And I would suggest there's others here who could do the same thing and help you. So don't be bashful. Brene Brown has a book that I recommend, Braving the Wilderness, basically on this kind of a topic. If you're familiar with her work, then you'll probably rush out and buy the book. If you're not, get familiar with her work, rush out and buy the book. I don't get a commission. Your own mind has held you captive. Your own mind. There's a Bible story that came up for me. Matthew 24:25. It's called the parable of the talents, for those of you who know Scripture. A very wealthy man was preparing to leave his home, travel to a far country. And I mean, he was wealthy. So he entrusted his wealth to 3 men to become stewards of his money. In this story, one received 5 talents, another received 2 talents, and a third steward received 1 talent. Now, talents were gold, and I just did a little research on this. They estimate that in today's money, that would be a talent. 1 talent would equal about $1 million. So we're talking a lot of money. So the first 2 stewards played Edmund, and they went out and invested the money. And they worked it. And they doubled the money over a period of time before the master came home. When he came home, they gave him back double his money. As you can imagine, he was pleased. But the third man, who'd been given 1 talent to manage, lived in fear. He was fearful of the master. He was fearful he wouldn't handle it well. So he buried it. And when the master returned, he dug it back up and gave him 1 talent. As you might imagine, the master was less pleased with him. And he basically ruined the man. That's not the moral of the story. The fearful steward was scolded, rejected, and punished. It was the fear of failure that cost him everything. He didn't try at all. Some people try half-heartedly because they're still afraid to fail. If I don't try, I won't fail. Therefore, I succeed. Wrong. In this parable, the one man, or the man given the 1 talent, was afraid. He didn't try. He hid his talent in the ground. Now, in English, he hid his talent. How many of us are hiding our talents? Think about that. You don't hide yours, do you? No. He hid his talent in the ground. That's so metaphorical for all of us. Okay. If we allow ourselves to be paralyzed by fear, we guarantee failure. But if we rise above the fear and are willing to risk failure, only then can we succeed and we're free from the fear. Nelson Mandela. There's a man who had a reason to know fear, but he didn't. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. Faith is the answer. Fear to faith is a journey that each one of us gets to walk at different times in our life. Charles Fillmore, the founder of Unity, said this: to have the faith of God as opposed to faith in God creates the experience of demonstration as opposed to the experience of mere hopeful expectation. We often quote that first part. We have the faith of God, not faith in God. Big difference. Ernest Holmes said, remember that God is in, through, around, as us. We literally need to change ourselves if we wish to transcend fear and transcend and change things around us. It is the foundation of what we teach. Now it is time to truly begin to live. Change your thinking, change your life. Dr. Holmes. Love this one. Can you guys see it okay? Mm-hmm. Okay. Don't let your struggles consume you. In What We Believe, Dr. Holmes says, we believe the ultimate goal of life to be a complete emancipation from all discord of every nature, and that this goal is sure to be attained by all. Complete emancipation from all discord. That's the not love. Isn't that the all discordance is not love, fear. Rosa Parks knows a thing or two about fear. And she knows a thing about overcoming it. When you have an intention, when you set your intention, you have resolve, your mind will begin to listen to you and let go of the fear. In Sermon by the Sea by Dr. Holmes, he said, find me one person who no longer has any fear of the universe or of God or of man or of anything else, and you will have brought to me someone in whose presence we may sit, and fear shall vanish as clouds before the sunlight. Una más. What regrets do you have when you allowed fear to prevent you from expressing your oneness, your divinity? I can't quote Marianne Williamson's great quote, but it's, our greatest fear is not that we're inadequate. It is that we are powerful beyond measure. I meant to include that somehow. That slipped away. But you all know the quote. Some people say it was Nelson Mandela, which is what made me think of it, but it was Marianne Williamson, and he quoted her. So don't let regrets pile up. We live in this 24-hour news channel cycle. Social media bombards us with things that are wrong. We live in a world where separate is it's better. No. The them against us mentality. If we focus on what is wrong, we keep recreating the same things over and over. Whether it's our lives, our community's lives, the environment, it affects everyone on the planet. Most news today incites fear in its listeners. It's hard to discuss solutions when we're talking about the fear. How we phrase our language either builds walls or builds bridges. Ask yourself, in a world that works for everyone, what can I do to help heal the planet? There's an old adage, if you didn't plant a tree 20 years ago, that it's not 30 feet high today, okay, plant one today. So in 20 years, you're not living in regret that you didn't plant that tree. If you don't do it for our children, our children's children, generations beyond, that's one regret that didn't have to happen. So, final affirmation. I am the manifestation of God in form. There is no separation. There is no duality. Watch out, world, here I come. And so it is.
And so is